It's a parenting tool that my next guest believes has the power to transform your home. That's no small promise, and it's something all parents have access to. We'll call it a secret, I guess. The secret is laughter. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson believes in it, and she says laughter is a simple but incredibly powerful way to create strong and lasting parent-child relationships. We're ready to laugh?
Yes.
We need to laugh more.
I should have led with jokes.
I
should have
mean,
read all the
no,
jokes.
because then the mom puns would have come out and we would have lost all credibility in a second. It seems so simple, Heather, but why does laughing matter so much? Why does it carry that power?
Yeah, it does. It seems really simple. It does. And the power comes because it's almost like this gateway to everything else we want to be as a mother, everything else we want to be as a grandmother, right? It opens the door for us to be more patient. It opens the door for us to be more kind. Laughter opens the door for us to be more even just connected with someone else, for us to communicate differently. It opens the door to everything else we want to be as moms and as grandmas.
So then why isn't it happening more in our homes or our families or our closest, most fun relationships?
Yeah, I mean, there's unique reasons for every family, but there's a couple reasons that hit all of us. One, if we're too busy, it's really hard to find time to laugh together. We're constantly telling kids where they need to go, what they need to be doing. We're accomplishing, we're racing around. And so there isn't those moments where we sit still for a second and we allow laughter to be how we connect.
So laughter requires a space. It requires time.
Yes, it does. Even a recognition. We want to think of laughter. Right now, we think of laughter usually as a reaction.
Okay.
We want to switch that and think of it as a tool. Right? Instead of thinking of it as something when something happens a certain way and there's enough time, then I'm going to react to something that's funny. We want to see it as a tool I'm going to use in order to connect long term.
So you sort of just validated me in a really, really silly way, but I'm going to be vulnerable and share. In my early 20s, I remember, and I don't remember if someone pointed this out to me. I don't remember if I made this self-realization, but laughter didn't come easily to me. Like, I was a fun, I think, lighthearted person. I'd like to hope so, but I wasn't, it wasn't easy just to laugh, and I set out to get better at it. Like, I almost wanted to practice laughter, and so and now I can laugh and cackle and, you know, embarrass my kids
much easier.
in the middle of a room. It's easier, but to think of it as a tool, does it take practice sometimes?
It does, and it takes a willingness, and even some of those other things that get in the way, right? Like, sometimes it's hard for us to recognize our insecurities or our fears and laugh at ourselves, and that gets in the way of laughter in our home.
Yeah.
Even as parents, I think there's often times where we think if we laugh at something, we're minimizing it, right? Have you ever considered you could laugh at a kid who's having trouble in school? You could laugh if there's something like a spill in your home. You could laugh if something goofy or silly or even pretty powerful in the wrong way happens in your home, and using that laughter, and we think, well, if I laugh at this as a parent, then I'm minimizing the fact that this is serious. And those things all get in the way of us using laughter as a tool instead of thinking, tell the right joke and then our family will laugh at it. This is key. It opens all of those doors to everything we want to be in our homes.
And you know what I've observed? This is just Brooke 101, but I have this belief system that families are like teams. Like, we were not put together accidentally. I think there's some divine design there. And every family has at least one person that will tell the joke, that will diffuse the situation. And I personally don't think that's by chance either. For us, it's a 7-year-old who makes us laugh every single day, no matter. And I think highlighting that person and celebrating that person can maybe bring out this tool that you're talking about.
Absolutely, and we do. Everyone in our family plays what we call a functional role. That's what you're talking about. Someone's a peacemaker. Someone's the one that brings in the humor. We play those functional roles. And how cool would it be if we saw the one who was funny as a functional role that benefited our whole family, and we jumped on board with that?
But sometimes we squash them.
Sometimes we do.
Because they happen at inappropriate times, or we think, like you said, that it's taking, you know, taking the seriousness out of a serious situation. So to celebrate that, I think, would be a good, worthy effort.
And to do it every day. The key here, because why this is so powerful, it isn't just that today we're going to laugh. It's that if we laugh today and tomorrow and the next day, then we've created a relationship of laughter over time. We actually know that laughter builds bonds over time. So parents, and I know I feel the same, we want nothing more than to have relationships with our kids as they get older. In fact, it's something that I see in my office more and more, is parents coming in and saying, please help me have a relationship with my adult children. We don't have one anymore. And to know that laughter helps ensure a relationship over time is pretty amazing. It is that powerful if we'll use it as a tool instead of a reaction.
You say it can improve that communication. It can also create those bonds.
It creates those bonds. So this is one of my favorite benefits to laughter, is that what happens is when we allow laughter to be a part of our lives, our family members are able to be themselves. And when we're ourselves, we trust each other more. And that's what bonds us. That trust bonds us. So for example, in fact, we just went through this about a week and a half ago. Our 9-year-old was filling up her plate for dinner and the plate slipped. It was heavy. Actually, it had corn on it, and the corn rolled off and down went the plate and it fell over on the floor.
Yeah.
And instead of it being anything but funny, we all laughed and made a joke about how that plate must have been really jumpy. That's literally what came out of everyone's mouth. And she looked at us and we all started laughing, and then everybody jumped on board making jokes about how this plate was extra jumpy. She was herself that day. The plate spilled, and it was okay. It was okay for her to show up that way. We feel it in our home with teenagers, right? When your teenagers come home and they're telling you a story or they're running through their day, and it might not be something that you deem that important or that you have a lot of energy or time for, but as you make a joke about what they've told you and you sit there with it and you laugh about what's gone on, it's okay for that 16-year-old to be exactly who they are. Laughter allows us to bridge that gap so that everyone can show up as is, which builds the trust, which makes us want to connect long term.
And you use the word make it fun, make it funny. Like that's an effort. It's not just going to happen.
It's energy, right? We're not reacting. We're using it as a tool. How can I use laughter right now to connect with you?
And isn't it so interesting that even as you were describing, you know, those on point real life situations, and even as we've highlighted all the benefits and the power of laughter, I still was like, oh, but don't laugh at them. Oh, but the corn was buttery and it had great. I mean, you almost feel this like human instinct to like resist the moment.
There is, and that's where we've got to bust through that and go, wait a second. I want a relationship with that 9-year-old when she's 30.
So laugh now.
Long term. Laugh today, because all of the laughter today and tomorrow and the next day adds up to 30 years down the road. It builds that foundation and that connection.
I love that so much. You say laughter, of course, relieves stress. I think a lot of people could say, well, sure, I can see, well, that would break the ice and lighten the situation. Talk to me about this last point. Laughter builds resilience.
It does. Think of resilience as an ability to bounce back, right? And that's the power in this. You know, this one, I actually rely on a situation that I went through when I was younger with my own parents. Where in a singular week, we lost an aunt and my grandfather all in the same couple of days. And it was so heavy. Wrapping our brains around what was going on was so heavy.
How old were you?
My aunt was much too young. Let's see, I was probably about 20 at the time. And so we've got that going on, and my grandfather, and about 48 hours after my grandfather died, our dog passed away, right? And it's one of those situations where everyone's looking at each other and it's like, we can't take, and now the dog.
One more hit.
And I remember my parents coming in and my dad using humor and laughing at the situation and making a very appropriate yet joke about, are you kidding me? And now we're gonna bookend this entire week losing our dog that we've had for 15 years. And as the room started to laugh, my brothers and I, we had this release, this ability to just sit for a second. And I could feel that resiliency of, we can do this as a family, we can get through this. And it was so funny, it was the laughter that did that.
And you're talking about it 25 years later.
And I still rely, I often think of that week, I often think of those couple weeks that came together and rely on them to be resilient now, to bounce back when all of a sudden another week hits and maybe it's a death in the family or just an overwhelming situation, and go, wait a second, we can laugh at this.
In our final 30 seconds, speak to the woman who is by nature serious, thoughtful, maybe like me, laughter didn't come easily at one point. How do we channel this? How do we reach for this?
So one, we're going to wrap our brains around, first and foremost, that this is power to connect. If we think of it like that, it really does help us shift from I'm not this to, hey, I want to become more of this, right? The other mistake, and I feel the same, I am not by nature a goofy, silly person.
You've said that. You don't like the animal noises.
I don't.
You don't. Yeah, it's not like you're goofy.
And so I have had to separate, and I think it benefits to separate silly from laughter and connection. When we separate those two, I don't have to be silly. I don't have to be someone I'm not to laugh and connect with my kids through laughter or through our family, with our family through laughter. But I think we equate laughter and humor with, I've got to be goofy and silly and I'm going to have to bark like a dog and I've got to be, I've got to dress like my 16-year-old and I've got to sing her song. I don't have to be silly to be able to laugh if I'll see it as a way to connect.
Okay.
It's a beautiful ability. It transforms family systems over time.
And the connection, the correlation you've made from laughing with that 9-year-old now to bonding with that 35-year-old later, I think is motivation enough and plenty. Thank you so much, Heather. Heather coaches families and individuals. You can find her contact information on our website.